This is Karie, Carico with Carico Real Estate, and I am so excited to be here with Jarryd Moxley from Farm Bureau. And we are going to chat all about insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance, and everything in between. So Jarryd, how are you doing today?
Great. Hope you are.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Any plans for the weekend?
Thanksgiving was yesterday. We've had
Yeah.
some tickets for today, or this evening booked for the last few weeks. We are going to a Derek Huff, I guess it's a dance show you want to call it.
Yeah.
My wife actually owns a dance studio.
Very cool.
And both of my girls are on the teams there and take dance throughout the week. And so we decided, as part of their Christmas present, that we're going to see the Derek Huff show at the Stephen Tanger Center tonight.
That is so cool. He is
Yeah.
like so amazing. He and his sister. So
Yeah.
I'm kind
We
of
were
jealous.
at Disney a couple years ago, and Disney always puts on the Christmas Spectacular show. They air it on ABC, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And so we were there when they were recording, and Julianne Hough was out there in front of the castle, and we were watching them. It was really cool to
That is
see.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. They always have been. I remember when they were like young.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's cool. I'm kind of jealous. That'll be fun. I have
Yeah.
no idea what I'm gonna do. But hopefully, I get a little bit of time to relax. So that's kind of the goals. So that's kind of it for me. I have no plans and that'll be okay for once.
That's
Um,
right. I don't mind not having plans.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. So
Yeah.
when like I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? Not a really big Black Friday shopper or any kind of shopper like that. That kind of stresses me out. So I will not be doing that for sure.
Well, Black Friday started like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know it did. I know. I'm kind of like already done with all that fun
Yeah.
stuff because I've already got like the killer deals. So,
I know.
yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I probably won't be doing any more of that. And I know we're kind of like already through Black Friday as
Yeah.
of now. But for everyone else, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, your company, and how you got into real insurance?
Yeah. Okay. So Farm Bureau Insurance, we're North Carolina Farm Bureau is the
Mhm.
real name of it, and we're a North Carolina based company.
Yeah.
I'm licensed only in the state of North Carolina,
Okay.
and so we have offices in all 100 counties, which is, I don't think any other insurance company anywhere can say that, especially for the
Yeah.
state of North Carolina. I used to be a PE teacher.
Wow.
So I used to teach PE, and I enjoyed it. I wanted to be a coach, and so I
Yeah.
coached and taught PE, and loved my job.
Mhm.
My manager here now was an agent and was my agent before, and he just kind of approached me about coming to Farm Bureau. So I talked to him a little bit, and that's been 5 years ago, and the rest is history. And my teaching license is now expired, and my insurance license is not. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing, and got two little girls, married, and we live in King, but my office is based out of Winston-Salem right here. But I've
Yeah.
got clients all over the state.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And you have helped a lot of my clients. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm so grateful for all your help. So you sell insurance, but what types of insurance do you actually sell? So everyone knows.
Yeah, right. So we pretty much sell anything and everything. I mean, the Farm Bureau name, as far as the policies that Farm Bureau actually offers, are
Mhm.
your home insurance, your renter's insurance, because that's a big one. There's a ton,
Yeah.
apartments, things like that. If you're renting a house, anything like that. Landlord type policies. So if you own rentals, auto insurance, obviously. So our big ones are home, auto. We do health insurance, commercial business insurance, and life insurance. And so that's
Very
kind of the big ones, with all the little in between squeezed in there.
Yeah.
But then there's always some like niche things,
Yeah.
like we had talked about before. That was
Yeah.
the tiny homes, things like that. There's
Yeah.
always a way that we can find coverage somewhere.
Yeah.
Classic cars. I mean, there's always going to be little things that are different, which we can always broker out to someone else and find coverage for somebody. So
Yeah. So off the cuff, quick question when you were talking about all that, do you guys actually insure like multifamily? Just curious.
yeah, so I mean, it really, at the end of the day, it really depends on the size,
Okay.
and the value. We're not the big apartment buildings downtown Winston Salem. We're not going to touch them.
Yeah.
It's too big of a risk for our company. And there's typically that's going to be a specialty type insurance
Yeah,
company
I
ways.
figured.
But I do insure some of the buildings that are downtown, that are office space and things like that. It may be a 5 to 10,000 square foot building or something of that nature, but we will insure those commercial spaces. Just multifamily. I do have some small apartment complexes, some in Stokes County, some in Forsyth County. But it really all depends on the size. So yeah, we do that too.
Okay, very cool. I would assume it's like a duplex, a quad, or like even 8, like
Yep.
I was.
That's right. So I've got some in King
Yeah.
that I had quoted before, that there were 8 in a 8 in a
Unit, yeah.
8 in a unit. Yeah, and I think there was
Yeah.
4 units, and so we offer all of that.
Okay.
But obviously coverage on the building, and then their liability coverage at that
Okay,
location.
very cool. I was just curious. I just like thought about it randomly, and I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if you actually do that, because I haven't. Yeah, because I actually have, we buy investment properties, but we also have investors that we work with, and I know, and so I was always just curious of, can I send them to you or not?
Right.
Yeah, so I'm glad I got to ask you that question. So when a homeowner is like coming to you, what are like key points that they should be looking at when they're choosing a policy?
Yeah. So if it's a new, there's usually 2 different type of people coming to me. Someone that's already got their homeowners in place and they already own their home and they're shopping, or something like that. Or maybe like somebody that comes to me from you or another realtor or something like that. They're coming to me because they're under contract purchasing this new home. And every client's different. Some want to know every detail about the policy, which sometimes can be a lot, but they want to know their stuff. And then there's some clients that if you send them something, they just click and sign it. They don't even know what they signed. So they don't even read it. And so there's definitely a extreme to both ends of that. But yeah, they obviously, the main thing, the very first thing they care about is their price. That's just what everybody's going to care about. But at the end of the day, price is important, but it's not the main factor. You need to make sure the house is covered, especially for the way it needs to be covered if something crazy happened. And then make sure that the stuff that you're going to have inside your house is covered correctly as well. And then liability coverage, all of those things. And the policies that I offer, especially to clients like yours and new homeowners, they're going to be the same policy I have on my home. That's what I tell people. Don't be scared of this quote. You don't need to know, yes, study it and read what you have, but just know that this is the same policy I have on my house. Also try to let people know, some other basic things like, especially with what's happened in the western part of the state. You do not have flood coverage unless you buy a separate policy. So that never was a big topic before. But obviously, with what's happened recently, it's a bigger topic for us here in our area. So I'm really letting people know that you've got to buy a separate flood policy to have coverage for that. And I've probably only done a few since all that happened in Asheville and Boone and out in the western part of the state. But I've had a lot of people asking, and so but that's something I also try to let people know up front now is like, know that this and earthquake coverage is another one. We don't really have those, but that's kind of two main points that aren't really covered on your home policy.
Yeah. Now I'm from San Francisco, so earthquake policies were a big deal. Because we did have a lot of earthquakes. So it was a common event.
And a couple other things too is, you want to make sure that whoever you've gotten a quote from or whatever your policy, maybe you have a policy already, you obviously want to make sure it's replacement cost, because I've ran into situations where it's not what they thought it was, so you want to make sure you have replacement cost on your home. So if it was a total loss, you could rebuild it, and make sure you also have enough coverage to do that.
Okay. And so that was another question I had. So what are like different specific endorsements or add-ons should a homeowner not overlook, or what should they pay attention to on a policy?
So most of the time, a homeowner's policies is going to cover a lot of the same things, but there's always going to be some little endorsements that can be added to a policy that will give you a little more coverage in certain areas. Earthquake, like we said, is one of them. There's another small one that I always try to stress to clients too. It's called water backup coverage, and you
Okay.
know you can get into more details on that later. But it's an extra endorsement that's not covered under your typical homeowner's policy.
Okay.
Replacement cost coverage on your personal property, your
Mhm.
contents, is another little endorsement. Another one is I like to call it a cushion, and what that is if you're insured for X amount, you
Yeah.
know, most people think I'm only insured for that amount. Well, there's a little endorsement that can get added to your policy that gives you a cushion over above what
Okay.
that amount is.
Okay.
And most companies will put that on there for you, so you're not having to, you know, think about, do I have that coverage or not? But some of those other little ones don't necessarily get added.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
interesting. So would some of the items that you're talking about be considered like a natural disaster endorsement? Do you have something like that? Because when I was reading about is that right? The right term to say?
Well, we don't have an endorsement like that. Every
Okay.
company's different, you know,
Okay.
and you know, depending on where your house is like, so especially in North Carolina, we have a lot of different, you know, our state is totally different from east to west.
Yeah.
So at the coast, you know, a typical homeowner's policy is also not going to include, you know, damage from like a hurricane.
Yeah.
You know, I've got some clients down there, they've got multiple policies, or a policy that's structured in a different way to include your normal things like a fire or a water damage or something like that. But then
Yeah.
if there's storm damage, it's a lot of times covered separately as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So another question a little bit about homeowners policies. What should buyers and sellers know about the policies or the insurance plans that, you know, during a transaction or going into a transaction? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, so I always try to give clients options.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is I'll send over multiple quotes a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that is, and a lot of times the quotes really very similar, with the only difference a lot of times being the deductible and the price. And I
Mhm.
just give clients that option of, hey, you can have a higher deductible on your policy and it's going to lower your price, which is in turn
Yeah.
going to lower your mortgage. And you know, a lot of people, especially first-time homeowners, don't understand what an escrow account is,
Yeah.
and they don't understand how that works, and they don't understand that their homeowners insurance, if it's $2,000 versus $1,000, their
Yeah.
mortgage is going to be affected greatly by that.
Yeah.
And they also think that they have to pay for the policy up front. They don't realize that it's part of their mortgage payment and all of that. And so, especially those new homeowners, I just try to stress to them that, look, this policy is a good policy. You know, if you're, especially too with the houses they're buying, you know,
Yeah.
lenders aren't going to allow them to buy a home that they're not going to want to loan money on, you
Yeah.
know. And so same thing with the insurance policy, it's going to have to be the same way. But I just try to tell them, like, hey, look, this price will affect your mortgage this way, this price would affect it a different way. Pick the option you think you like best. And then the other thing that also goes in with that a lot is, you know, you always hear bundle and save, bundle and
Yeah.
save. Well,
Yeah.
you know, if you come to me and just do your home, yes, your price is going to be higher than if you do your home and auto together, because you get that price discount on there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's so funny that you said that, because my sister went with your company
yeah,
for her new home that I helped her purchase. And then right after, she added and she bundled the auto insurance, which she was
right.
like, it just made sense.
Yeah,
Definitely. So, you know, a lot of homeowners or, you know, sellers or buyers, really buyers, when I help buyers, they do ask, they're like, when should I start searching for in homeowners insurance? When do you feel like is the best time? Do you think it's like right after they go under contract, or do you think that they should ask you prior to going under contract?
right. So everyone's different. I've got clients, I've told them, and even realtors that I work with, I'm like, if you get
Mhm.
a client that's interested in a house and you want a quote for them, or they want a quote, reach out.
Yeah.
Quotes don't take long to do. We can get the address, we can look at the property card, we can run a quote for them, and give them an idea of what the insurance would look like on a house that they potentially want to make an offer on. But most of the time, it's right after they go under contract. That's the best time to go ahead and get it out the way, because you've got a list a mile long
Yeah.
of things you've got to get done now.
Yep.
Insurance being one of them. And
Yeah.
the lenders, and probably even you, like
Yeah.
it better if it's done earlier.
Yep.
And so,
As soon as
and
they
you
do.
know, and so that's why you know, you reach out to me when you go under contract a lot of times to say,
Yeah.
hey, can I get my quote, a quote from my buyer? And then you know it's done, because your job's to make sure too, along with the lenders, to get this stuff done so you guys close in time and
Yeah.
they can close on their house in time. So
Yeah.
yeah, the sooner the better for sure.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. And that is one of our things we ask like right away. Literally as we're putting the offer in, or if it's getting accepted, we're like, okay, let's get some insurance quotes. That's always our go-to. We find out if they've already got a really good, relationship, or would they like us to give them
Right.
different insurance agents, which we typically try. Definitely, because we love working with you. So with investors, we kind of talked about that a little bit before. What should real estate investors consider when they're issuing, like policies for rental properties? Do you have like any just general info that you could share
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Some basic info is when you're investors, and a lot of them, if they've made it to that point already, kind of
Yeah.
know the things to look
Yeah.
for. But yeah, obviously the condition and if the property's been updated. When
Yeah.
it comes to insurance and insuring those properties, we've got to make sure they're updated. And sometimes they're not so much. But I've got a handful of investors. They choose to insure. Every investor chooses to insure their properties differently.
Yeah.
Some want to make sure they are insured for replacement cost, and if that's the case, they do have to be updated. If they don't care to insure them from a replacement cost, and they just want to make sure that if there was a loss, that they're going to get their cash back or something like that, or at least the value of the home, then they can insure it for lesser coverage and a lesser amount. And the property doesn't really have to be updated as much in that case, because it's valued as a depreciated amount at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any like specific products for real estate investors that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the type of property too that they're buying. If they're buying a multifamily property like we talked about, then
Yeah.
you may need some type of a multifamily dwelling policy or a multifamily commercial type policy to cover that whole thing. Versus if it's just a single family home, yeah, you can do it's typically called a dwelling policy. And then you can choose the type of dwelling policy that you put on that home, and that
Yeah.
determines if it's insured for that lower amount or for a replacement cost amount.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so I work with you a lot. Being a real estate agent, how do you educate real estate agents and or their clients? How do you collaborate with a real estate agent?
Yeah, so and I work with a ton of different real estate agents, and I love that we can partner together. I work with some lenders and stuff as well. But as a realtor, that you just want to help your client as much as you can. And I think we're all in that same boat when it comes to our businesses. We want our stuff to be good for them, and then we want them to trust us. And so that's how I feel like the realtors that I work with, I want them to obviously trust me as well and know that I'll take care of their client. But you know that your client has got to have some insurance in place. You can't get this in helping them. And like I think the last thing I left off on was that you've got to have insurance to finish a transaction. And you want to take care of your clients, and one of those being insurance. And so if you've got somebody you can trust, then it makes things a whole lot easier on you, on the client, on the lender, on everybody, knowing that they're going to be taken care of and that their policy is going to be structured the right way for them too. So, but yeah, I work with a lot of different ones, and all of them have just told me that it seems to help their business, knowing that they're able to provide that one extra little thing for them, going over and above more than just a real estate agent,
Yeah, no, we love it. We love that. It's so helpful. So one other question about, a typical homeowners that they might have questions about, and we've heard so much about it and there's so much confusion around it, is the roof. We can't insure the house because of the roof. Can you like give us any clarity with that or help me out with that? Because I don't even know how to answer that question anymore, because it just seems like a lot of just,
Yeah, so it's become a bigger topic really in the last year to 2 years than it ever was before. And a lot of it has to do with the amount of roof claims that insurance companies are seeing. And a roof, the way I compare a roof a lot of times is like tires on your car. They're going to wear down, and just like insurance doesn't replace your tires, you know? And so people have just started coming to the people have just started to think that my insurance will replace my roof when it gets to a certain age. Well, that's part of being a homeowner too, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but Farm Bureau is very, very good about working with clients and things like that. So some stuff that we've rolled out recently is, you know, if a roof's over 20 years old, unless it's got the paperwork that is an extended life roof or something like that, if it's over 20 years old, we try to we will insure the house, but we will insure it maybe a little differently for the roof. They'll get maybe a lesser amount for the roof if something were to happen. And so,
so let's switch topics, and we're going to talk a little about auto insurance. What do you feel like is the biggest misconception that people might have about auto insurance?
Yeah, so I think just auto insurance or any insurance in general is one of those things that people like get it and forget it. It's just I trust the company I just got my insurance with, that I have what I need. And then the other thing is just people don't really understand it either sometimes, you know? And so the biggest thing that you can understand is the three main coverages, really. There's really three main ones, kind of four if you want to break it down even more. One, you have your liability insurance, you know, and some people don't even know what that does and what that provides, you know. And then you have, which is coverage for other people. And then you have your comprehensive, you have collision coverage. And then you also have one little thing that a lot of people don't realize is on the policy either. It's called uninsured or underinsured coverage. And so, you know, the comprehensive and collision they're two different things. They're not the same. You know, one term that I really don't love that a lot of people use is full coverage. I have full coverage. You know, what does full coverage mean? Does that mean you have everything that's possible for you to have, every little bell and whistle? Or does that mean I only have liability, comprehensive, and collision coverage? You know, so everybody throws that around, but nobody has an understanding of exactly what all that covers. And so we try to be more specific, you know. So comprehensive coverage is you having an accident in your vehicle or something happening to your vehicle that's not your fault, and no one else is involved, really. You know, so obviously if someone else were to run into you, their liability insurance covers you. Comprehensive would be a deer, or you bust a windshield, or you come out and there's a tree limb laying across your car. All of that would be comprehensive. If you don't have it, none of that's covered. Collision fixes your car if you are the reason it wrecked. Pretty much. That's what collision coverage does. And so, and everybody has different takes on, you know, do I want to add all this to my car? Do I not? Depending on the age of it, the value of it, things like that. And I always just try to talk it over with people. I never recommend taking any of it off, because you know how that is. You take it off, and Jarryd told me to take it off.
That's how it always is. If you take it off, then that's going to happen. So how can somebody ensure that when they come in to get a quote, that they're getting the exact thing that they possibly need? What should they ask to make sure that they're doing that? Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're the real estate expert. So if somebody comes to you to buy a house, they expect you to know what they need to do, and you know, all the things that come along with when they're going and viewing these houses, right? Same thing with me. You know, we're the experts, and there's always going to be little things that, you know, that you have to find out about, or whatever the case is. But, you know, I always just take it on a case-by-case basis. Everyone's different on the vehicle they have. You know, and a lot of things that can change your insurance is if you have past accidents, or if you have past tickets. Things like that can really throw a kink in it and really make it, you know, the price increase. And so just sitting down with someone, and I was going to mention that later too, but just sitting down and doing a review of not just your auto insurance like we're talking about now, but just really everything you've got.
And I really don't understand a lot of it, but why is life insurance and like such an essential part for like someone's long financial goals? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really for a lot. I mean, most everybody that is married, has debt, has kids. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different reasons why people get life insurance. And
Yeah.
so, and there's so many misconceptions about it. And so, people say it's confusing. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you want to just have something in place in case the worst happens,
Yeah.
especially, kind of like in the business you're in, where people are taking out the biggest debt of their
Yep.
lives,
Yep.
and if something were to happen within just the first few months of that thing, and you got a married couple who's bought their first house and have this large debt, don't
Yeah.
have any life insurance, I mean, the house has got to go up for sale,
Yeah.
more than likely. Whereas with a life insurance policy in place, you pay the house off and you continue, you don't have that payment anymore, which just eases things in a time where it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so the ability in my line of work, the ability to take that check to an individual and just take some of that stress off their shoulders in that time that's just the hardest part of their entire life, it
Yeah.
just, makes me feel good that I know I'm helping somebody in that area.
Yeah.
But it's just important. I mean, you've got different types. You got term
Yeah.
insurance, you got permanent insurance, and that's a whole topic for a whole nother day.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, if you've got debt, you've got kids, you got people that rely on your income,
Mhm.
it's so important to have life insurance, just for that protection in case the worst happens. But then the other thing, I'm losing my train of thought. Is I just lost my train of thought on what I was getting ready to say.
Oh, that's
Um,
okay. That's okay. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
just go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we can come back to it if you remember it. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
remember.
for
I
sure.
just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
I had it
So
in the back of my mind, but yeah,
okay.
we can come back
So
to it if I remember.
that is called slip of the tongue. I have a psychology degree and that's like something. So what we want to do is just change like your train of thought and then it'll come back. That's
Yeah.
always my trick. So let's switch over to commercial. For small business owners, what are key types of coverages that you like feel like they should have in place?
Yeah, so small business owners, I mean,
Yeah.
most of them have their business, corporation or LLC or something like that. You definitely want to keep those separate from your personal life
Yeah.
if you can, and have the liability coverage in place to protect against that as well.
Yeah.
But we do pretty much all the business insurance, general liability, workers' comp. Let's say you own your building that you run
Yeah.
your business out of, the commercial property coverage,
Yeah.
umbrellas, which are also important. I mean, a lot of general liability policies have higher limits of liability, but
Uh-huh.
liability insurance, and I don't know if not a lot of people really understand what it is.
What is
Yes,
it? Can you explain
it
that real quick?
it's asset protection is what it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
That's at the end of the day, it protects you and it protects your money and it protects your assets.
Okay.
In the case of whatever policies you have in place, or
Okay.
if no policies in place, then somebody's got to come up with some money if something happens. Whereas your general liability and your umbrella policies, any liability insurance for that fact, is going to protect you. The higher limits you have, the less likely you've got to come out of pocket if in the case there is something that happens. So it's
Okay.
asset protection.
Okay.
And not everybody, and going back to the topic we were talking about, life insurance. Not everybody needs the same amount of life insurance, And
Yeah.
there's some people that would need higher liability limits as well due to just their assets and things of that nature too. So
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. So like for a landlord, what would you recommend for a landlord in there? Does it just if they own a couple of houses compared
yeah, well, and then too, so that all kind of depends on how your properties are deeded and things of that nature too. So if there's nothing wrong with having everything in your personal name. A lot of people have that, and they may have 3 or 4 rent properties that's all in their personal name, just like their home, their main dwelling is. And if that's the case, you just want to make sure your liability coverage is on all of those properties. You also want to make sure I would have an umbrella in place because the more properties you have, the more exposure, the more risk you have.
Yeah.
So an umbrella policy is very important as well. But then I would also tell my clients to always make sure your tenants also have renter's insurance.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean they definitely want to cover their own stuff, but as a landlord, your main reasoning for making them have renter's insurance is that they have liability insurance in place as well.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and that was like my last question. I was going to ask you about renter's insurance because I think people are kind of confused about that. So I'm glad that you brought that up a little bit, but just a little bit of before we end this, because I know you're busy and you've got to
Right.
get to that show tonight. What is, just in a nutshell, of like renter's insurance? People are like, oh, okay, yeah, because it covers my stuff in the house. But just a little bit, if you could just go and, a little bit
Yeah.
of detail.
So our renter's policy, at the very top of it, if you get a renter's policy with me and you get that thing in the mail or you go look at it online, it's going to say homeowners insurance on it.
Okay.
And it's just a different form of homeowners insurance is
Okay.
all it is. It doesn't cover the structure, and it doesn't cover any other structures as far as that you're insuring that property. The owner of that building would do that.
Okay.
Your renter's policy is going to cover your personal property that's in the location you're living at. It's also going to give a piece of coverage that a lot of people don't even realize is there. If there's a claim of some sort and you're unable to live in that property, then you've got some funds available to stay elsewhere. Which is nice, because sometimes that would be hard,
Yeah.
to provide, have that money to stay elsewhere in the time that your place is being repaired. And then one of the other main things is it just gives you liability coverage. So,
Okay. Very cool.
people coming to your property,
Mhm.
even if you're renting a home, you're living there, you're having packages delivered there. There's people coming on your property, and anytime someone comes on your property like that, there's increased risk for liability occurrences. And so the main thing is obviously covering your stuff, but liability coverage as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you. And thank you so much about talking about, that it would actually cover maybe, like if they are displaced, because I'm always curious about that. Like what kind of insurance would help that, because we own rental properties and we've got renters in
Yeah.
them. So I'm glad you brought that up. But overall, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. I don't want to take any more of your time. We've spent quite a bit of time today talking all about insurance in general. If anyone wants to get a hold of Jarryd, all his contact information will be below in the comments, but you can also reach out to me. You can DM me or call me or text me, and I will definitely hook you up with Jarryd. But Jarryd, thank you so much for coming on and chatting today. And sorry about your phone was having some issues, but it still was great. We got great information, and we appreciate you so much for coming on. And thank you.